They have not reversed catch and release. They want to continue with the same Trudeaupian policies supported by the NDP that have done catch and release and caused a massive crime wave across this country.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre there soundly rejecting the government's proposed bail reforms introduced today. A bill or piece of legislation that comes after months of criticism from the opposition and provinces. BC started things off contending justice reforms had inadvertently led to an increase of repeat offenders out of jail and able to more easily reoffend. And then in December, an Ontario provincial police constable was killed by a suspect out on bail who was wanted by police for missing a court date. Here's what the government wants to change with legislation, as I said, introduced today. People charged with a serious violent offense involving a firearm and convicted of a similar offense in the last 5 years will face a reverse onus to get bail. That means that the person accused of the crime has to show why they should be released versus the onus being on the prosecution to make that case. The government is also introducing the expansion of a list of other firearms-related offenses that would trigger that reverse onus and requiring the courts to consider community safety and an accused's history of violence in making those decisions on bail. Justice Minister David Lametti is here in studio to talk a little bit more about how all of that will work. Hi, Minister. Good to see you. Thank you very much for making the time.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
I remember a few months ago you describing Canada's bail system as, quote, strong and sound. Is this legislation an admission that that isn't the case?
Not at all. It's an admission that we can always do better, and that's what we've done. So we listened to that call from British Columbia last October. We began to work at that point. They raised it at a federal provincial territorial ministers meeting. The premiers wrote to the Prime Minister in January. We looked very carefully at what they have said, and we've actually done what they had asked for today, and we've done more based on another federal provincial territorial meeting that we held in March. So we've been working closely with provincial and territorial counterparts at both a formal level and at an officials level, a technical level, and what we've come up with today, we think improves, I think, the bail system by making it a little more difficult in those two areas: repeat violent offenders and offenses with weapons, including knives, including bear spray, that the provinces have been calling for.
And I have some questions for you just about how all that worked, but I do want to get at the reason or the impetus for making these changes. Do you think you would have, had it not been for the political pressure applied by the opposition, yes, but primarily, as you point out, by the provinces?
Well, look, we listened to the provinces. There have been a number of high-profile events in Canada. Police officer Pierre Challa killed in Ontario. Other provinces, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, raising similar issues. So we have to listen. Part of the job is to listen. I listen, and I think we've come up with something that improves the bail system. I thought it was pretty good before, but it wasn't perfect, and I think we're closer.
The last time I interviewed you on this subject was kind of as you were about to meet with your provincial counterparts, and you said that you very clearly wanted to see data or evidence that supported the idea that the system as it was not sort of, you know, prompting an environment of safety and making people feel safe. You wanted to see data, not just conjecture about that. Do you have evidence that shows that the reforms you introduced today were needed?
Well, we have some, but one of the things that we came out of the federal, provincial, territorial meetings with was a commitment on the part of the provinces to gather data and to share data. And you've seen this, I've seen this in other areas of reform. In our federal system in particular, there are data gaps. And so we need to work harder, and we need to work together, whether it's the criminal justice system, whether it's health, whether it's the environment. We need to work together. And the provincial justice and public safety ministers committed to gathering and sharing data. StatsCan is doing it at the federal level, and we hope we can improve the data picture moving forward. The law contains a 5-year review, so that hopefully by the time we get to that review period, we'll have a better data set. But you're right to bring that up. I'm right to rely on data as an evidence-based government ought to, but it is imperfect and we need to do better.
But some data, is that enough evidence to make changes that will affect, you know, people who could be innocent facing the prospect of whether or not they stay in jail for an even more extended period of time? Like, shouldn't you have more clear evidence that those changes are needed before introducing them? And doesn't that kind of support the idea that you're just bending to political pressure?
No, I think it's fair to say that the process is such that we've been working at this a while. So we've been working at this since last October. We consulted not only provincial territorial counterparts, but we've heard from police associations who came out today very strongly in favor of what we've done. We have been speaking with other experts. We've been consulting Indigenous leadership. I mean, all of that helps us paint a picture. There are data gaps, but there was a pretty common set of requests for changes to the system, and again, they revolve around what you saw today in the bill.
The original reforms that BC, for example, had first said had some unintended consequences were aimed at addressing the overrepresentation of minorities in the prison system and kind of an overcrowding of prisons with people who were awaiting trial versus had been found guilty. Are you positive? Can you guarantee to Canadians watching tonight that the changes you're introducing today won't make that problem worse?
Well, we think we've threaded the needle here. There are obviously balances. We're working in the space protected by the Charter. This is a charter right that people have. We do have a concern about over-incarceration of Indigenous people, of Black people, of other racialized Canadians in the system. We're also worried about overcrowding in the system, there's no doubt. So what we're trying to do is have a targeted approach here that is both charter compliant and also meets those two concerns that you raised. Again, we think we've threaded the needle. We're talking about serious crime here, serious repeat offenses, and even in those situations, the contextualization that's required by GLADU, for example, for Indigenous offenders, still takes a second place to public safety. And that's always been the case, but we've made it clearer now.
But that's what I'm wondering, because I was looking through the reasons why bail could be denied, right? The accused is thought to pose an ongoing risk to the public. What's the difference between that and community safety as a consideration? Aren't they the same side of the same coin?
To some extent, but what we're doing is we're channeling the decision making. Right? I think one of the hallmarks of our system, one of the very positive hallmarks of our system, is judicial discretion. So we've got judges and justices of the peace who make decisions on bail. What we're asking them to do is to jump through certain hoops with this. So asking them to take into account and to show they've taken into account the community's desires. We had that case in the Yukon, an Indigenous community in Vuntutquitchin in the Yukon, where they didn't want somebody back on bail in the community because they were afraid of him. That's the kind of thing we want to see encapsulated.
But doesn't that make someone a risk to public safety? And again, isn't that something that was already there? And I tell you why I'm asking, because I'm again sort of getting at the point: is this actually substantive, or is this just sort of paying lip service because of political pressure that you faced over the last number of months?
Well, it's forcing the decision maker who has the discretion through a certain set of questions. The same thing with a reverse onus. It creates a different default, which is this person will not get bail, but it forces the decision maker into an analysis with a different set of weighting. And so it does make a difference. And I think it will be more difficult for these kinds of offenses, these kinds of offenders, to get out on bail.
I just have a few seconds, but off the top we aired a clip of Tory leader Pierre Poilievre, who says that this doesn't go far enough. And he basically said if he were to his party were to form government, they would bring in laws that would require repeat violent offenders newly arrested to stay behind bars, to essentially be jailed and have no possibility of bail. Is that something your government would ever consider?
We're constrained, I think, by doing the right thing and by the Charter. For Mr. Poilievre, everything has to boil down to an empty slogan. That's not what we do. We work with provincial premiers, we work with police associations, we work with experts, and we try to get to an evidence-based solution.
Is that a no?
His empty slogans will get us nowhere.
Is that a no?
I think we've gotten to a better result than he can get at using his slogans.
Is that, respectfully, Minister, does that mean that that's not something your government would consider?
It would probably be against the Charter.
Okay, Minister, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Justice Minister